A vitamin you buy at the store has never been approved by the FDA. A cigarette has never been approved by the FDA either. But the gum you'd chew to quit smoking, that one's approved. None of that makes sense until you understand what approved actually means. The FDA doesn't have one rulebook. It has at least three. And which one applies to a product depends less on how dangerous it is and more on what category it was filed under. For a drug, something like a new diabetes medication, a company has to prove two things in controlled trials: that it works and that it's safe enough for the benefit. That process can take a decade and cost over $1 billion. That is the only category where FDA approved actually means the agency reviewed evidence and signed off on safety and effectiveness. Everything else works differently. In 1994, Congress passed a law, DSHEA, that classified vitamins and supplements as food, not drugs. Under that law, a company doesn't submit anything to the FDA before selling a vitamin. No trial, no review, no approval process at all. The FDA only steps in after the product is already on shelves, if it turns out to be contaminated, mislabeled, or actively harmful. By then, it's already in your cabinet. That's not a loophole. That's the law working exactly as written. Vitamins were never supposed to go through drug review, which is also why the label says, "This statement has not been evaluated by the FDA." That's not a warning, that's the rule. This is exactly the gap AlsoFoundIn exists to close. The FDA isn't checking what's actually in most of what you buy, so we built an app that scans your food and shows you the industrial and chemical crossover uses, hiding behind ingredient names the label never has to explain. Now here's where it gets strange. Nicotine exists in 3 different products, and the FDA treats each one under a completely different rulebook. Nicotine gum, patches, lozenges, sold to help you quit smoking, go through the actual drug approval process. Trials, review, a real FDA approval. Cigarettes and vapes go through something else entirely. A pre-market tobacco application. It sounds like the same kind of review. It isn't. The bar isn't, "Is this safe?" The bar is this less harmful than what's already legally being sold? A product can clear that bar while still being lethal, because the comparison point is other lethal products, not a safety baseline. And synthetic nicotine, the kind not derived from tobacco, has spent years sliding through gaps between these two systems entirely, with companies racing to launch products before regulators decide which rulebook even applies. So when someone says nicotine is FDA approved, it depends entirely on which version of nicotine, in which product, sold for which purpose. The patch on your arm and the vape in your pocket are not regulated the same way, even though they deliver the same chemical. Once you see this, the pattern is everywhere. Approval isn't a measure of how dangerous something is. It's a measure of which legal category a company chose to file under. And that choice is usually driven by what's profitable to prove, not what's necessary to protect you. A new obesity drug goes through a billion-dollar trial process because a company can patent it and charge for it for years. A vitamin skips all of it because there's no patent to chase on a compound anyone can sell. A cigarette clears a lower bar because the law that created that bar was written to regulate an industry already too big to ban outright. None of this means unapproved equals dangerous or approved equals safe. It means the label is doing less work than you think it is. And the only way to actually know what's in something and what it does is to look past the label entirely.